waiting for an applause? Okay, let's give an applause. We got a full house today, Dean, no pressure. No pressure.
You know, it's interesting, along those lines, I was speaking with a number of you beforehand, and someone came up to me and said, "Are you nervous? You know, we have a full house today." And I just immediately thought I had never felt more welcomed anywhere I've ever spoken. I love coming here. So, the power of letting go. Pretty commonly, when I decide on a subject to speak about, it's come through a meditation. And part of why I love coming here too is that I can be so open with you about what I think really does matter, and hopefully I form it in a way that has meaning and is helpful for you as well. So anyhow, when I spoke with you last, the subject was titled The Power of the Mind. And I started off by talking about my earlier exposure to thoughts like you create your own reality. And I was young enough and ignorant enough that I don't even know why I was interested in something that on the surface really sounds outrageous. You create your own reality. And then I ended up taking a course where I was introduced to guided imagery and self-hypnosis and what I tended to call the power of the mind. And while initially it certainly did intrigue me, I was certain that there is no way, as I've shared with you before, there's no way your mind is that powerful and that you can create your own reality. So perhaps fortunately, I went to graduate school to study this. And while it's certainly a pretty prominent source of information that I put together and tried to understand the power of the mind and then be able to hopefully teach you how to be happier and healthier, I ended up studying guided imagery and self-hypnosis and what we call deliberate intention techniques, whether they're affirmations, prayer. And to my pleasant surprise, I found that, oh my God, there really is something to this. And went on to even demonstrate how we can use it with serious illness. And I made some academic notes. I hope you forgive me, but I know some of you here really are academically oriented, and so maybe you'll appreciate along the way I learned about the biologist Rupert Sheldrake and how we could, in fact, our thoughts create what he would call blueprint or morphogenetic field, so that really, in fact, you are creating this blueprint that somehow the universe manages to fill in and create what it is that you're focused on. Or Dr. Harold Saxton Burr from Yale Medical School talking about life fields and how does a cell know to become a particular kind of cell? You know, why isn't it random? How does it manage to come out what it's supposed to be? Like, think of a whole baby. How does that work? And he actually discovered what he called life fields. He could measure them. And he used an explanation that hopefully helps you. It helped me. When you think about sometime in school, we learned if imagine my hand is a magnet, and we put a card over the magnet, and then you sprinkle iron filings on top of the magnet, what's going to happen? The filings will take the shape of the magnetic field, right? And he said that's only infinitely more complex is what happens. All right, but what really intrigues me is, okay, what created the field, the template? And I don't have an answer necessarily. But I love the idea of the Mary Oliver citation, thank you, around, there's a part at which, I don't know if we could just call it common sense, but that there's got to be something behind this. And I'll give you a couple more quotes, hopefully that will be helpful that way, how people have tried to put this together to realize there is a force infinitely complex, that somehow has guided and organized all of this. And what if we could really learn to trust that, to know it, understand it as best we could, and let go? Now, here's the tough part for me, and I suspect for many of you, the idea of letting go of control. How comfortable is that?
Painful!
Now that's good, because one of the things I love about you and I love about myself is you're not afraid to ask questions. And you're not sure about some things, and so you want to try to figure it out. And so to make that huge leap, especially when we go through life and get beat up pretty well, and what do we know we really can trust and turn to? And so we can lose our faith. I like the word trust, but I have learned it can actually form into a form of knowing. That there's a way to know. And I know I'm talking with Cindy earlier about the idea of intuition. So however we understand that still small voice, that's something that comes within. Even I've shared with you how mine tends to come through in songs. In fact, I shared earlier with Laura Lee and with Jeff about, this is actually something I bought in Florence years ago in your Florence citywide yard sale. And it's a song that I've often gotten and came through today for me this morning when I was meditating about today. Praise God, from whom all blessings flow. Praise Him, all creatures here below. Praise Him who is our heavenly host. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Now, I'm not crazy about the word praise. But what makes great sense for me, and if I would change the word praise to thank you, thank God, from whom all blessings flow. Thank whatever you want to call or label the source of whatever is this outrageous, organizing, creative mind behind all that is. If we're really, really honest, it shouldn't be too scary to think about, because this is really an infinite understanding. You shouldn't feel too bad about not being able to really grasp it. It's big. But at some point, hopefully we get, like through meditation and other life experiences, to know that there is something special behind all of this. One of the things that really did help me, and especially at Dr. David Bohm, physicist, was at Princeton for years, and his ideas of quantum physics. And I loved his term, primary reality, that underlined all of physical reality as we understand it. When you get down, as I say, to the smallest of the small, atomic matter, subatomic matter, and small, honestly, you get to a point that there is no matter as such, really maybe just called potential energy. But Dr. Bohm called this a primary reality that underlies and connects everything. And he said meditation was a way to quiet the thinking mind, to perceive this underlying universal frequency pattern, which is a wholeness of complete harmony and order, a force of compassion and active concern for all of creation. He said the ultimate nature of the universe is an energy of unconditional love. And so, as I wrote my book, Why Love Heals, trying to understand my conclusion that people live longer with cancer because they felt loved and cared for, how does it really work, though? How does feeling loved and cared for honestly translate into remission from cancer? And so, with this kind of information, at least as I put it together, I thought, when our thoughts and behaviors resonate with this primary reality, health would be a natural consequence. There is this ultimate energy of love that penetrates and connects everything. It's a matter of opening to it and allowing it to flow. And so when you do that, when you align with love, however we try to understand this idea of complete acceptance of what is, and know that behind that is this completely benevolent energy. And sometimes I like when I can make it a little more tangible and express it in a way such as, say, with electricity. There's a term in electricity called in phase. And when electricity is flowing completely freely, ideally, without resistance, we say it is in phase. And so I believe we become in phase, and then why we can learn to let go is because we know it will allow for the optimal flow of this benevolent energy. So I learned a lot about how you can deliberately pray, do your guided image, whatever, to create a particular outcome. But what was cool to realize is, honestly, every thought we have is an energy, or this thought form, potential matter being created. And maybe, because if we can accept that there is this completely benevolent force behind everything, is the best thing we can learn to do, get out of our own way. If you think about the possibility that there is this all-knowing, all-powerful, everything good, do you think you really can outthink it? And we try, don't we? All the time. And especially when things don't go the way we think they should. Shelley and I just got over 3 or 4 weeks of having a cold. And I was not always thinking about thanking God for this opportunity to learn. But if we can, remember, and I'll give you a quote. In fact, maybe I'll do that now when I'm thinking about it. You know, I've been really blessed in my life to have some very unique experiences, and especially related to channeling. And when I was writing Why Love Heals, I was working with a psychic medium who became a very good friend of mine, Sharon Bauer. And at some point she began to channel John the Baptist. And in numbers of conversations through Sharon with him, it occurred to me I'm a writer. Because I don't think of myself that way. I wrote Doctor's Orders Go Fishing based on the program I taught, which I'm going to start teaching Wednesday now. I call Living and Thriving. But then when I wanted to write Why Love Heals, I thought, okay, not only, in fact, that was my first question for John, because he always encouraged me to ask questions as soon as I met him. I said, good, tell me why love heals. And then it occurred to me that I have this opportunity to be a spokesperson for John. I said, is there anything you would like to say? I'll write it in the book. This may sound all a little flippant, maybe even about, okay, Dean's talking to John, and then here's what he said. Humans are always and will always be connected to Divine Source, the source of love of God. Humans will, oh, I'm feeling this. Humans will always be love. Humans must experience emotions, both positive and negative, on this side of the veil in order to grow. They must learn to love the growth that they have gone through. It is important to go back with awareness and understand where the emotion came from, and then love the experience or synchronicity or coincidence that surrounded that emotion. Accept it as normal and what one is to experience. Love both the negative growth of it as well as the positive. If they could do just this one simple task, to truly learn to love and forgive the negative, what appears to be negative. And if they could truly love that and go through a daily ritual or daily awareness or a daily task that brings them back into remembrance of who they are, Dean, this is the greatest message I would want to give. Now for me, when you think about anything that someone like John might have said, I feel good about sharing that with you and around this idea of letting go. And even, I was speaking on Tuesday to a group, and it came up about the idea of, well, how do, or why do bad things happen to good people? And that really makes it tough when we think about letting go, doesn't it? When I was really younger and naive, just out of school, and trying to work with people with major illnesses like strokes and so forth, I remember thinking my job was to fix you. You're right. And I had to learn it wasn't nearly that simple at all. Largely we're taught, you figure out what the problem is, you analyze it, you solve it. Within months, instead of telling people, oh, okay, we just have this diagnosis, there are treatments, you know, and they lived happily ever after, I told them life stinks. I did. I was really trying to come to terms with this myself. And I don't want to tell you in this letting go process that you might not indeed experience some things you don't like at all. But what about the possibility, and I would say probability, somehow it serves a purpose? And so even when I look at more contemporary examples in meditation about what God is or who we really are in the deepest part of us, remember Jill Bolte Taylor's experience in her stroke of insight. And when she was, or that is her left hemisphere was compromised and she's living in her right, you remember how she said that her inner world, if there were one word to describe her experience, compassion. That's the core of who we are. And one feeling, joy. I will always tell you to go fishing. It's the truth of who you are. So as we learn and grow into and become more and more comfortable and trusting, I think we learn to let go a lot better, knowing that there's a bigger picture at work. I'm asking a lot when I tell you that. Because again, there are going to be things that are going to happen and you go, no. And you will question. But if, like as John is asking us, if we could go through a daily ritual of some kind to remind us that it's all okay. All is well. God is nigh. Safely rest. I'm going through half my notes. This might be scary. So, I wrote there is only love appearing in infinite forms. Every cell, every atom is compressed love, filled with and guided by the universal mind of primary reality. Now, of all things this morning in an email, I got this, I printed out. And the title of this article is Proof That a Creator Exists. Now this is going to be interesting. You know, like they discovered a God particle. Well, there are only God particles, for what it's worth. Anyhow, in the book The Life of the Cosmos, physicist Lee Smolin details the many variables which had to be exactly balanced in order for the universe to unfold into living order rather than random chaos. Now, I don't even know how you can do this, but he actually decided mathematically the chances of an accidental Big Bang producing a universe that produces life as we know it is 1 to 10 to the 229th power. What that means is if you can imagine a 1 with 230 zeros after it, those are the odds that that happened by chance or coincidence or randomness. And interestingly, the article ended up saying that we really don't understand physically what energy is, but metaphysics defines energy as compressed divine consciousness. So, one more quote. I really do appreciate when I can give you something more solid and scientifically based. But Max Planck, back in 1918, actually was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics for his discovery of a quantum theory, and that underlying everything is a quantum field. That just like we can't see air as such, but there's air everywhere, or at least within our immediate environment, there is this infinite sea of energy that exists, that Bowman called the sea of energy, of that sea of love. And so Planck, nearing, I think this goes up to 1944, he got his prize in 1918. So he had a lot more to think about and say. In 1944, as a man who has devoted his whole life to the most clear-headed science, to the study of matter, I can tell you as a result of my research about atoms this much. There is no matter as such. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particle of an atom to vibration and holds this minute solar system of the atom together. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. Yeah, so it's fun for me to think about these big ideas and try to make sense of them, but in the end, I'm pretty pragmatic about, okay, I want to be happier and healthier, and I'd like to teach you as best I can. And so I appreciate your patience with me. You're giving me a chance to express some of my thoughts about how in the world does this happen? You know, how could that really work? I mean, even think about the physical body. And I was reading an article, also reviewing for today, where Dr. Bruce Lipton, and probably some of you read his Biology of Belief. Yeah, and he says, estimates, because I don't know how you actually count this, 50 trillion cells in our body. You can't really understand how much that is. 50, how the hell do they all cooperate? How do they all get along? And what are there, about 78 of us here today? 50 trillion. What is the force? What is that ultimate organizing mind that makes all of this work? I don't know. Again, we can label it. There are expressions like, hey, let go, let God. That's not a bad expression. It, you know, depending on who the audience is and you understand the framework within what I'm saying. Remember how I told you when I was trying to make sense of suffering, I ended up looking at all kinds of different ways to understand it, and I studied religions for a while and was remarkably surprised how they all agreed that we are all one with God, all one with all that is. That still today goes, I don't know how they ever in the world managed to all believe that and agree with that. That thought's just that big. But what if you knew that? What if you really knew what your source is? And you were this compressed God, this compressed love, manifesting in a particular unique form. So one of the things I find when I'm able to get into this good space about trying to even love what is, even if it's a cold or something much, much worse, is to come back to, you know, this kind of an understanding that it's all good, it's all really well-intentioned. And what I find, and it's such a special space, is then, rather than again the idea of praising God, is I can't not but just stop and go thank you. If you could really, really understand that the deck is 100% stacked in your favor all the time, even though it may not appear that way. How blessed we are that there is something we always can turn to, or at least I encourage you to do that. Let go and trust. Thank you.